having children was the most important thing I did, but it wasn't the only thing I did. Being a mother to me has just truly been such a blessing, but it's not the only thing that I've done, and it's not the only thing that I will do. And people, the world, my family will know me for other things. And I thought that was just like, I thought it was remarkable.
All I see is blessings on blessings, yeah. I see the blessings coming our way, our way, our way. Blessings on blessings, yeah.
Welcome, Camilla Marcus, to the building, guys. I mean, I am so excited to have you on the Cool Mom Code podcast. This is awesome.
You're my cool mom icon, so I'm humbled.
Look, I'll take it, but I won't own it, but I'll take it. I will take it because we met, and I'll do a proper intro for everything and let everyone know all of the amazing things that you are that I don't even think I knew. I was so surprised to even start to research you a little bit.
She just knows me as the crazy pregnant lady.
I didn't. I knew you as the, we met what, I haven't even known you a year.
I know.
And I feel like I've known you, honestly, I feel like I've known you for
I know.
Realistically, I feel like I've known you for 8 years. 8 is very specific for me.
All right.
Because it's long enough where I feel like we've had deep conversations and been through things in life, but not like a childhood friend, but like someone who you've met in a really deep transitioning stage of life. Yeah. And I don't know. So I feel like we've experienced that in probably 4 months.
We went too fast.
4 or 5 months. Easy. But I met Camilla, and she was pregnant with her third, and 3 under the age of 3. Oh, yeah. She has since had her baby, her third baby, and you're fresh off of it. This was 6 weeks ago. You kind of feel like me, though. I swear, nothing kind of stopped. There was no, it was just kind of okay, once I was having babies, the first one with Nima, I paused. After I, had her, I paused. I had to figure things out. My whole life was what is happening? Yeah. But once the second and third came, I was all right, y'all need to roll into what's happening because this is going with or without you. Okay. Sure. We got to keep this boat moving. And so I feel like that's kind of how I'm seeing you. I'm seeing you, I saw her last night at dinner, guys. This woman does not stop. You don't stop.
Probably for better or worse. I have a lot to discuss with my therapist about that. It's definitely my coping mechanism. More is more is more.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a maximizer too. I think that's very much my personality. And look, there's the great side of that, and then there's obvious. We all have our shadow selves.
Yeah, we do.
Maybe that's not the best. I definitely have had a therapist be so just do nothing for 3 days, and I was like, what?
Can you?
Sounds like hell. I can, but that's not.
But did you? Did you do nothing for 3 days?
I did.
Interesting.
I did. I also married someone who's very the yin to my yang, and I think he also helps me take a beat. But I do. I like it. I like being on that speed. That's where I feel my most self. But it also depends on the birth that you had. My first was really intense. I also took a very solid beat,
right.
And then this one was my baby fell out. I was with her 5 minutes before I delivered. Got to the hospital at 4:15. Out he came at 4:24. No tearing, no medication, 1 push.
That's amazing.
Yeah, of course you feel fine.
Yeah, but what was it from total from start to finish?
I started having contractions at 4 a.m., so not even that long.
Oh, it wasn't
I
long.
had 72 hours of labor with my second.
So she started having, let's just break this down for a second, because let's give everyone the full context of why we're laughing and kind of giggling about this, because she started having contractions at 4 a.m. on the day of her baby shower.
Sprinkle.
Baby sprinkle. And guests are arriving now. Now it's noon or whatever. Yeah. Guests are arriving. Friends are here. We're doing meditation sound baths. It's a beautiful experience. Everyone's enjoying themselves. And she's pausing every couple of minutes to go through a contraction. She's okay, hold on one second. Yep. Okay, I'm fine. Yep. Back at, we're what is happening right now? And you were literally having contractions about to have this baby. I got home from the baby sprinkle, and not an hour later, they were I was getting texts Camilla had the baby.
Well, look, I know, it's very me, it's very unusual. But when I woke up that morning, you know, my daughter was 72 hours. So I was like, I don't know, this could be a couple days, who knows?
Yeah.
And I had like, with her, I had excruciating pain. This was pain, but it was definitely manageable. She was back labored. She was like kind of corked and stuck. I mean, it was 3 days of like misery. Right. So I really didn't know. And I was sort of like, okay. We sat down and I was like, I have a choice of, I can be with people I love as a distraction and everything is already planned, or I can sit in bed and kind of like writhe through all of this discomfort. Why not? I don't know. It's like the pain's not going to go away. I might as well have some fun while we're at it. And who knows what it's going to be like. The sound bath, though, I think is what kicked it all into high gear. You think so? I totally give the sound bath the credit for why I didn't need an epidural, why the labor and delivery went so fast. I think being able to actually get into a true meditative state just allowed everything to open. Everyone left at 3. I went to the hospital at 3:45. My gosh. And I delivered the baby at 4:20. But they were like, how did you not know you were this far? I was like, I also had nothing to compare it to. Both my other births were so different. I didn't have any sort of benchmarks. Yeah, and Josh was so cool. Your husband was so cool and calm. I mean, like, that's during the whole process. He was like, "You want a drink? You want a coffee? Can I get you anything?" I'm like, "Josh, he was head barista." She for real. She's having contractions. What is happening? It was just like you know what it is though. If you're ever around people who just feel like they really do take the moments of life as what it is, that's what I feel like when I'm around you and Josh. Like, of course there's struggles, of course there's ups and downs, of course there's things that happen, as we do, we're living, this is life. But I feel like you are two people, just every time I'm around you, I feel settled. I'm like, I am not even your child, I am not even like, I don't live in your house, but I feel like this, like, just settledness, like, just like, hey, you know, this is, we're here, and this is okay, and life is good, and find the positive, and that's just what I feel whenever, so, like, I get you. Our future house is Taurus, that we both share. Oh. Which is why we are very different, but I think our end point is all about, like, peace, right? Yeah. And it doesn't mean there aren't ups and downs. It doesn't mean you don't have energy. And we're an Aquarian home, so we're very kooky. There you go. Exactly. I was like, oh, all makes sense. Let's jump into the kooky. Let's jump into the kooky, because it's not kooky. But it's not kooky. I think being in full labor at your baby shower with people there is kooky. You know what I love, though? I love just, like, your home, right? Like, I feel like when I walked into your house, I was like, oh, my God. This is, like, a playground for kids and adults of all ages. The reason why I say is because there's a chicken coop. There is, you know, sustainable, like, fruits and vegetables, and basically a farm on like in one little corner over there. There is, like, I feel like there's so much. Like, walk me through, like, you know what? Take me back to the beginning, because that's even a fast forward. Let's get there. Yeah. Take me back to, you're raised in LA, and then you go to New York for school, right? For university at NYU. And, like, take me through how you were raised and how you got there, and why food. Like, why chefs? So, grew up in LA. I actually grew up on the same block as Kim Kardashian, the Kardashians, and Mrs. Gooch, who was the first natural grocer. So she was actually the person that Whole Foods bought when they came to LA. So are you and Kim like besties from, like, childhood? I don't know that they would remember, but we were their neighbors, and it was cool because our whole block had all kids all of our ages. Oh, that's great. Which was so fun. It was very, like, I always say I grew up on a WB backlot. Like, nothing fancy, nothing special. We had no cell phone reception. Like, ever in a dial-up internet in my neighborhood as of, like, a couple years ago. Right. Okay. Really, that's like, chill. Wow. We all knew our neighbors. My next door neighbor's still my best friend from, like, growing up. We still see each other regularly. That's really nice to hear in LA. Yeah, because that's very unusual. Especially but my parents weren't in Hollywood. Right. So there's also, you know, I didn't grow up in that world or community. Mm-hmm. Yes, like, through my high school, but not really my core. Mm-hmm. And I always loved food. I mean, I remember Mrs. Gooch. I remember wanting to taste all the new snacks. I was like, give me the stuff that, you know, didn't hit the shelves. Really? My dad spent a lot of his early career in Japan, and I loved sushi. I would sit at the counter and be like, give me your best shot, like, try and scare me. Did you go with him to Japan? Were you there a lot as well? My oldest brother went. I was too young, and my dad was like, I can't supervise, so like, you're too young for me to do. Like, I can't even do it. He's like, no thank you. So my oldest brother got to go, but we grew up with a lot of Japanese culture. We were going to Little Tokyo before people were doing that. Like, it's funny, no one in my family's all that into food, but that was still very much part of
your
trying
upbringing.
things, experiencing new things is very much sort of our family culture. So came to New York, I went to college in Philly, and I just always wanted to go to culinary school. I didn't know where it would lead. I don't know that I was doing it as a career
so your first stop from LA was Philly.
Philly.
Oh, okay.
I loved Philly.
Did you? And like that's
It was more
very
manageable. I felt like New York was too big of a jump.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting you say that because I went from Detroit to Chicago when I really wanted to go from Detroit to New York. But in hindsight, I went to school right outside Chicago, and I was like, wow, that was the best thing that could have happened to me because the jump would have been too big for me. It would have been too big for me to
We
go.
have our whole lives to be adults. I felt like it was nice to have a little bit of, I mean, Philly's somewhat like LA. It is major and urban, but it's so spread out. Like there's different neighborhoods. So it actually feels
diverse,
more like a small town.
Yeah, it does. And it's a different feel. It's also a different ethos, you know what I mean? Of the fabric of the city. It's
food-wise too. It's like
it's just
LA,
different.
Philly, you're like,
yeah.
Quite. So I came to Philly and I was like, oh, people don't compost? Like,
Dude,
people don't eat organic.
But wait a minute.
So weird.
Were you doing that in LA at that time,
Yeah.
though? Oh,
I mean,
wow.
everyone shopped at farmers markets. I mean, we are the epicenter and sort of the start of the food revolution that's now very much in the zeitgeist. But, you know, we talked about that sort of stuff. You bought from farms. You met the person who made your food. Like, that wasn't so unusual. Wasn't prohibitively expensive. Like I said, Mrs. Gooch was like, people shopped at Mrs. Gooch's way before Whole Foods came on the scene.
I mean, that
was like regular.
For me, it's interesting because growing up in Detroit,
of course,
composting? What? How do you spell it? Like, exactly. I mean, like, what are you talking about? Why would I ever? Like, we weren't raised with that in mind. So, you know, for me, it took years and years and years for me to actually become a young adult to get to that place. But for you, it was a part of your childhood. It's what you instantly
And you don't
knew.
Realize that you're in this bubble till you get out and you sort of look around and go, oh, whoa. So then I went to culinary school, and our culinary school, now they've since been bought, but it was the French Culinary Institute.
In New York.
So
now you're
Soho.
from Philly, now you're in New York, and you're in
Soho.
So
I went to undergraduate business in Philly, and I told my guidance counselor, I was like, I am going to the French Culinary Institute. And she was like, it's 2007. So height of everything being on fire, like everyone's having the best time, everyone's being hired, you know, economy's booming, about to crash, which we didn't know.
Right.
And she's like, excuse me, come again? Like, culinary school?
Yeah, that's like, an interesting flip. I mean,
yeah. Well, and she's also like, we don't get paid to like put on a piece of paper that someone went to culinary school. Like, not good for my stats. And I was like, I'm so sorry. So I went to culinary school in Soho, and they composted. I mean, it was one of the first times I'd seen sort of an industrial place at that scale actually doing things like that. So that really started my thinking around food and sustainability and climate change. And in fact, my original thought was going into alternative energy, and I applied everywhere for jobs, and no one would hire me.
Really?
The NRDC, SWEAR, National Resource Defense, I got the saddest rejection letter from them. I wish I had framed it. And I was like heartbroken. Everyone's like, you don't have this science background, you don't have this background, you don't have that. And I was like, but food is such a big part of this. I'm interested in climate change. Funny enough, when I was younger, I used to write letters to the president, to the White House, about environmental issues.
No.
Oh, yeah. I was always an activist since I was a kid.
Wow.
You know, I wanted to be a vet when I was younger.
Yeah.
And then I lost my dog, and I was like, no, I can't get out of bed. I can't do that.
Wow.
I've always been very into animals, into health, into the environment.
Into people.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, so now you're at culinary school and you're composting and you're doing all these things probably that you didn't even realize that you did when you were younger.
Totally.
And now you're doing them in more of a industrial professional setting, right? And so where do these ideas come from for you to start your own restaurant? You know what I mean? For you to like really go on this like total journey of becoming this badass, like, not only chef, but like just badass person who's like basically saving the food industry.
Well, I think, look, I worked in my first restaurant job, opening a restaurant with some friends, and realizing like the movement of climate change, right? At that time, alternative energy was being talked about so much, especially during the crash that started to really grow in the conversation. But you look at food and restaurants, we make more decisions about what we eat and drink in our daily lives than almost anything else.
Yeah,
it's a huge portion of what you spend. I don't care what age or demographic you are.
So true.
It is our universal language. It's our universal connector, and yet all the sustainability issues I had been thinking about through these interviews really weren't being talked about. Like, no restaurant was composting.
Right.
They weren't talking about alternative energy. Like, you keep the lights on most of the day when you have a restaurant. Like, there are ways to do that in a more energy efficient way. You actually can grow some of your food on site. Like, there's a lot of indoor farming companies that are doing pods that are now in commercial kitchens. But you, especially in a place like New York, every foot you go is a restaurant.
Yeah.
Think about if even one thing changed at each one, what a drastic compound effect that would have.
Right.
So that's where my mind started going, is like, okay, I grab a coffee. What if that could actually do something for the environment? Okay, I grab a glass of wine with a friend and have this amazing meal. That's what we enjoy in our daily life.
Right.
Why can't enjoying something, much like you buy a shirt and it does something for a community, or you buy a pair of glasses and it does something for a community.
Right.
You saw it happening in fashion. You started seeing really the proliferation of clean beauty and people talking about waste and beauty.
True. Yeah.
All through babies. I mean, look at what Honest
Jessica,
Company,
yeah,
right?
that's
Like,
exactly
that was the first time that people were like, you know what? I don't really want petroleum on my kids.
That's
and you know
right.
what? I don't want to support that industry.
Anymore.
And I want to start thinking, right?
But also having transparency, right? Also
Totally.
in your process. I think that also was something that shifted too. It's like consumers finally wanted to know what exactly were in the products that they were buying, what they were eating, GMO, and all these other things that were in their foods. Like, they wanted to know more too.
But it hadn't really come to food.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at restaurants and no one was talking about waste. No one's talking about packaging. No one's talking about single-use plastic.
I guess you're right. I mean, I think that people were talking about organic versus non-organic.
But they don't really know what that means.
But no, exactly.
And they don't really know what non-GMO means
It's
either.
so true.
Now we're like, I mean, now that I run a packaged food business as well, oh my gosh, I mean, the certifications are almost hilarious. I feel like I'm in a Portlandia skit. It's like, there's a certification for everything, which in some ways is important of standardization. But I also think it's a little bit of form over function.
Right.
Most people look for it. It does mean something. You can't get into certain retailers unless you have them, but the basic knowledge of what that really means and why it exists is a little bit lost, and we're sort of getting into like, oh, it's stamped natural.
No, you're
I'm
so
fine.
true.
You're
They
like,
say it's okay. It's kind of
Exactly.
that mentality. Okay, so wait a minute. So
I started seeing it rising in other
these
industries.
things.
Food always lags, and I really started seeing. So we had the first zero waste certified restaurant in New York through a company
amazing.
called True, which does all the LEED certifications. And we were actually their pilot. And I said, look, let's go through every level of a restaurant supply chain and let's see if we can get the latest and greatest.
Right.
You know, having actual dishware in the restaurant, using upcycled denim napkins. You know, how do we source? What kind of regenerative farms are we talking about?
And what did you find? Did you find that all this was successful? Did you find that it was something that people really wanted to be a part of?
I did.
Yeah.
I do think that millennials and Gen Z, this is everything of what we care about.
Right.
And it does matter, and it does move the needle. I think where the interesting opportunity is a lot of the technology, a lot of the capabilities that you can find are still in very early phases. Right? Like, even in clean beauty, right? First generation clean beauty brands, it's like, you did what you could. You're doing the best you can. Now there's a lot of options for how to make a clean product.
So true. I mean, yeah, I think the market is obviously opened up a lot more than where it started. But with the restaurant, you also implemented something for your workers where, well, two things that stood out to me. One was you were really set on making sure that everyone in the restaurant knew everyone's job. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we had complete cross training.
I mean,
half of our team never cooked before they came and worked with us.
That's wild. So someone from the front knew exactly how to run the front of the restaurant. Is the same person who knew exactly how to run the back of the restaurant.
Everyone rotated positions.
Wow.
And we worked with a local organization called The Door in partnership with Robin Hood. And we trained youth in the neighborhood, most on first jobs, second chances. And the goal was really to create a hub in our community. I mean, look, think about, there's no real other business besides restaurants. I mean, this is what I was saying very loudly in the pandemic with the Independent Restaurant Coalition and ROAR. Where else can you have a starter job?
Yeah.
Where else can you go if you have a record? Where else can you go if you need to restart your life? There's very few jobs that really have no barrier to entry that also have high growth.
That's so true.
Like a manager, the sad part is you start out high, then to get to manager level, you unfortunately have to take a salary dip, and then you sort of go up again. but you don't really need any prior experience. You don't have to have gone to school. You don't need to take a certain test. Right. You just have to be hardworking and curious and willing to learn. But did you feel
like that model, was successful?
Yeah, and you're seeing it all over now. Yeah. I mean, Food Education Fund is another group in New York. It's a vocational school. And they're now doing like a mass placement program, but we were the first to hire out of them.
I love that. When I heard it, I was just like...
Everyone talks about needing people. Yeah. And I think, look, do I think your whole team can be inexperienced? No, that's true for any business. Right. But, it's almost like our mailroom, right? I mean, there's a lot of businesses where you start ground level, but like most industries, you have to have gone to a college to get into the mailroom. That's ridiculous.
You know, it's the idea though that they tell you when even like you're starting a business, and this is so off topic in terms of like just the restaurant industry, but it's like when you're starting a business, right? You as the business, you as the founder, the CEO, you kind of have to know how to do every position in your unit.
Enough to be dangerous.
You have to know, right? You have to know a little bit of everything. So when you do have talent that comes in, you know how to direct, you know how to lead, you know what they need, like whatever it is. Totally. And then as people surpass, that's great, and the business grows and da-da-da. But I loved the idea that with like such young people, right, coming into the restaurant industry, and I just started to think like as a model in New York. I mean, I didn't have to work in the restaurant industry, thank goodness, but I had a lot of friends who did it, you know, at night or did it like, you know, as a side hustle to bring in extra income. Totally. And I was just like, wow.
And interestingly, it definitely started taking root in the pandemic as well, because people had to go down to skeleton teams.
That's right.
I'll never forget, I was on a call for the IRC, and a major restaurateur, not in LA or New York, they were like, wow, you know, it's been amazing. Like, you know, our line cook, like, he can package orders. Oh. And I was like, what?
Yes.
And he's like, it's amazing. Like, I don't need someone to just do that job. And I'm like, yes, welcome to the world.
Right.
But it really more deeply was meant to really craft what Josh actually coined as business empathy.
Right.
You know, I think it's very hard in businesses. I think a lot of people, it's easy to be like, that person has an easy job. Right. They're not working as hard. Mm-hmm. They don't know how tough. I mean, we talk about this all the time. It's really easy to look at someone and think that their life's peachy.
Yes, it is.
You know, it's really easy, and that's almost never the case. Mm-hmm. And in any business, okay, you think taking orders, like I would say to the team, you know what? I know you think being on the hotline is so tough. And it is. You're hot. It's stressful, it's quick, you're burning yourself, you're managing all these things. It's very physical.
Right.
You think that the person taking orders is like a loser. Like you think that they're lame and they're soft. Go sit and figure out how exhausting it is to have to be happy for a full 8 hours.
Just so you know, guys, now she's getting into real like restaurant like talk right now, like real back kitchen talk. I love that.
So I would swap them, and after the day, they're like, "I want to go back to the kitchen." Yeah, and I'm like, "No, you are on this rotation, and you now need to realize, like, yes, it's not hard in a physical sense, it's hard in a different sense. Correct. But it is immensely tolling to have to be patient, to have someone yell at you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've done it. I tell them all the time. Do you know how many times at the restaurant people will be like, I need to talk to the owner? And I was like, well, I'm the owner. They're like, no, it's a guy from Australia. And I'm like, it's not, but I'll give you a man. And I would grab one of our team members and like, why do you always do that? I'm like, look, if they want to talk to a dude, like, that's on them. That's fine. I don't need to fight them. What am I going to do? Sit here and like, I've been yelled at 8 a.m. I mean, I say every kid, all my kids are going to work in restaurants, at least as teenagers. Like,
just to give them grit.
Totally. And you get a real humility for the amount of times, too, where I've interacted with someone at the restaurant. They didn't know I was the owner. I just served them, took care of them. And then I sat at a dinner, like, as a guest next to them. Uh-huh. It was like so Pretty Woman. I mean, did not recognize me, did not have any conscientiousness of how differently I was treated as a guest at a dinner next to them versus serving them.
That's amazing.
Oh, has happened more than once.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow.
But it's true.
I mean, I could totally see
very different in restaurants.
Well, I think that, they think they're being served. Yeah, exactly. And I think that just like many service jobs, you get overlooked, right? Like, I don't think people give them the eye contact. They don't, they just don't take them in. And I think that that's what it is. And so.
Well, look at what happened in the pandemic.
Yeah.
We're the second largest employer in the country and did not get proper financial assistance. And we were the only ones totally closed where you can't work from home.
Wow.
That shows how much our country totally dismisses service.
Right.
And like I said, only entry level with no barrier to entry, with actual career growth, number one employer of minorities, number one employer of single mothers.
You don't think about this. You
Totally.
don't think about these
but they're
facts
getting
like
the
that.
shaft 24/7.
That's
And by
wild.
the way, I mean, I'm also very low tech and analog at home, especially with the kids. Probably
Yes.
Joe's fault. I'm like,
1,000% you
I'm
are.
like, no, we're gonna farm in the backyard. That's your idea of
Yes.
fun.
No iPads,
My 4
no
kids
TV,
like have
no
no
nothing.
idea what the world is
No.
like.
They're gonna be shocked.
But my son the other day goes, Siri, play Hey Jude, and Josh and I were like, it was like the record scratch. We were like, what did you just say? And I was like, who's Siri? And he goes, just dead silent looking at me. And I'm like, exactly. And where's your manners? We don't talk like that. Hey, Siri, like, you say please and thank you, and that's not how we ask for things. And both of us laughed. I said, that's why I really don't believe in Siri, Alexa. First of all, why are they all women?
That is wild.
We are not
though.
required to say please
It's
and
so-
thank you.
You're like,
and you
hey,
just spit orders at them.
who is Hey
Welcome
Siri?
to misogyny. Every woman out there, get rid of those goddamn devices.
You know what?
You kidding me? That's so
But the
subliminal.
fact that you even took it to that, like that was not computing.
Oh, it
here.
drives me mental.
That is wild. I mean, I see
I
why.
died when you said Siri. I was like, no.
I see why
Siri's
you
now
don't.
dead.
So she has no electronics for kids, but that's
We
why
do
she's
iPad
created
very limited.
on an
Very.
airplane.
Airplane, long cars, and like,
Yeah.
if they're really sick and I'm actually trying to get my son to like not move around, we'll pop him in our bed.
Right.
But very, very, very infrequently.
Gosh, I wish.
And I actually won't do it if he
I
asks
wish.
for it.
I wish. I mean, maybe if I lived on
kids
a
are older,
playground
though. That's
farm
also
that you lived in,
different.
my kid's 4. I don't know, and I've been doing iPad for a minute. I mean, listen,
know.
no,
But that's why I
it's-
want the house that
But
we
I
have.
love the fact that you have all these other stimulants and of nature and of like the world around you. But hold on though, while all this is happening at the restaurant, and you're like, doing this whole model of like saving the restaurant industry one person at a time, has babies even entered the world at that point?
So I have a really unusual path. I really wasn't sure I wanted kids. I told Josh when we got married, I said, if you really absolutely know you need kids, like, I don't know that I'm the person
How,
for you.
Sway? How is that possible?
I
Don't
know.
understand.
I
Nope.
know.
Oxymoron. No. No.
I know.
Not you.
Of
That's
all my friends,
extremely
they
hard for
predicted
me
me
to
to be
believe.
last to be married.
Oh, me too, though.
When I...
And I was first.
Exactly. So much in common.
So much.
Everyone predicted last to be married. When I met Josh, my dad was like, I thought you wouldn't get married till you were 40. And I was like,
But
compliment
why?
weird. I don't know, maybe.
Because you were just
But
always
I also
driven.
wasn't around kids or babies. I was the youngest.
Same.
So I was
Same.
like, I didn't dream. I think some women, though, are really born with that. Like, I want to hold your newborn. I want to change their
1000%.
diaper. Let me do.
Born
like, I
with
didn't have
that
dolls.
instant nurturing,
Ugh,
like
hated
they knew
dolls.
they wanted to have it. Same. I knew I wanted to
I
have
didn't want a
kids.
Tamagotchi. I was like, this thing's so needy. But I wanted dogs.
Yeah.
So I made my mom get a dog. We had dogs growing up. I was like their caretaker.
Right.
Like, I loved animals. So maybe that's the...
Nurturing side.
So I
that
graduated
came
college,
out.
wanted a dog. We got a dog immediately.
Okay, but
Then
when
we got
did
a
babies
second.
come in?
So my husband and I were separated
Uh-huh.
while I opened the restaurant. And I
Okay.
froze my eggs and we froze some embryos for optionality because I knew I didn't want kids yet.
Uh-huh.
I was starting to think maybe I might change my mind, but I wasn't ready.
Right.
So at 30, we froze. We reconciled about a year later, and about a year after that, I got pregnant with our first.
Wow.
We had
And
a
so-
lot of fertility issues.
But this is interesting, though. When you separated, though, was Josh totally on board about freezing eggs? Or was that something you just kind of did on your own? You were like, listen, I'm going to do
so
this.
I had a friend, Alyssa, who you know,
Uh-huh.
was talking to me about freezing her eggs, and I was like, I want to do it. She was here in LA. I was in New York. I was like, let's do it as like simpatico sisters. We're gonna do it cross country together.
Oh, I love that.
I just decided. I went into NYU. I mean, you know me.
Yeah.
When I decide, I do it. I'm just like a
1000%.
person who
you
just
are.
does
You're
it.
like headstrong. Once
Literally,
you make the
I talk-
decision, you're like, okay, no, it's already done in my head, so I might as well do it in real life now.
So I went to NYU. I was like, great, I want to freeze my eggs. When do I do it? They're like, day 2 of your period. I'm like, great, that's 10 days from now. What do I got to do? Paperwork, great. Coaching sessions, let's do it. They were like, we've never seen someone do this faster in our entire lives.
Wow.
It was Thanksgiving week. I did it, and I just told him, I was like, I'm doing this. He wanted to do embryos, and I said, it's got to be half and half because I don't know if we're going to reconcile. I'm going to be straight up with you. And then, of course,
Wow.
you know, you'll laugh because you know him. So part of the interview and process for freezing embryos is you have to mutually agree about what happens if you're incapacitated or die.
Right.
What happens to the embryos.
Right.
obviously we do not agree. Josh is like, well, I'm going to keep them. And I'm like, you're going to have your dead wife's kid with a surrogate?
No.
How are you going to ever date again? So also that's my pitch, anyone listening. I think it will make the best rom-com. Josh, college sweetheart.
Yes.
They freeze eggs while they're separated. They reconcile. She dies tragically, and he has those goddamn children. And then it's all about him dating, trying to explain who these kids are. Guys, I'm telling you, 50 First
so
Dates.
Fucked up, but it's
but it touches on our reality.
It
which
sounds
is
like J-Lo
our
should definitely
reality
do
of
it.
families is so different than our parents.
It is. Our
We're
reality
not
is
the
very
cleavers.
different. You're absolutely right. And the way families are made are very different than how we were raised.
And
so
there's this weird comedy of like
that's an interesting
science
point,
and
though.
tragedy and like up and down. I mean, even if parents were separated or going through hard times, our parents never talked about any of that stuff.
but being separated and like really making embryos, that is like, that's some adult shit. I'm sorry. That is some like mature adult
dark.
shit. Yeah.
And real.
That is real. That's some adulting.
I kind of think of it as like new age knocked up.
Yeah,
sort of like, where are they now? The next one.
Okay.
So
that
we froze,
happened.
we reconciled, and then we started trying with our first. Months and months and months, could not get pregnant. And I was like, I actually wanted just to do IVF. I was like, we have the embryos, they're healthy. Who cares? We want, we want a baby now. What's the point? I think men have a lot of pride and ego in it. And he was like, no, I really want to try. And I was like, oh, okay. So I said 6 months, that's it. And I'm going to the clinic.
Right.
You got 6 months to make a baby.
This happen.
We're out. 6 months.
Which is
swear
really
to God,
only like
on
6
the nose.
tries. I
Totally.
mean, once a month you get it. Like, you get
but
one
I'm
little
in
window.
My mid-30s.
Yeah.
So I was like, look, I also don't have the time to just be like trying on end.
Right.
And by that point I said, look, we're having 0 or 4. And I was like, you get to choose, but we're having 0 or 4. We're both one of 3. I like the idea of pairs. And I actually just recently shared this with someone, but it is true. I grew up with a lot of people as one of 2 who lost their sibling. A lot. And in my family friend group, amongst friends. So I always felt that 2 would be unfair. I would never have an only child. I just think that's weird.
Yeah, I don't think I could have ever had an only child either. I knew I wanted my child to have siblings. Yeah. Well, I grew up as one of 3 too. Yeah. And so I just, and my husband grew up as one of 4 of like between his mom and dad, and then he had half siblings from his dad's side. So he grew up one of many, like, and just really big families. But I grew up with one of 3, and so I knew I wanted to have more than one. But y'all, 4 is a lot.
I know, but you're gonna have 4 with us. So
I'm breathing. I have to breathe in and out.
Breathe through it. We'll do a sound bath. They'll get you in the mood.
I mean,
are you hearing this, Issa?
Yeah, for real. Issa's like, hello. I'm ready. I'm ready.
I'm here.
I'm ready.
So that was kind of, truly that was my thinking.
Yeah.
I feel like pairs makes a lot more sense.
0 or 4. 0
so we agreed 0
or
4. 4. So we're like, great, 4 before 40. And that was our mantra.
What?
So I found out I was pregnant with my first 2 days before starting IVF. It was Valentine's Day.
Really?
And
Go Josh.
I found out on Valentine's Day. Found out. So it was actually the weekend of a move. We had moved apartments, and I was like, who knew? Moving. So stressful. Worked like a charm. It's like the opposite of every fertility advice. You're like, great.
Calm.
I know. We're like,
healthy.
So I called the fertility clinic. I call NYU, and I'm like, oh, can you confirm the pregnancy? And they're like, oh, we don't test for pregnancy.
Excuse me?
Your blood panel doesn't test for pregnancy, and
understand.
you're about to implant?
Exactly.
Swear. I was like, this is crazy. They're like, yeah, that's actually a good point. And I was like, oh my God. So it was President's Weekend, so I had to wait 5 days to take another blood test at a clinic to figure out if it was real. And I was, it can be
that can be
not
real.
You can have, so I was like, let's not get too excited.
Because this is peeing on a stick, basically.
Yes, but then I was a little freaked out because if we didn't do the transfer and I found out I really wasn't pregnant, then we missed that window. So, like, people don't even realize how tough it is for women. This stuff is like...
It's minute. Isn't it wild, though? You spend all this time, like, trying not to get pregnant. You're like, no. I need to do this first. No. And then when you're ready to get pregnant, so many women are like, God, like, what is happening? Why is this so difficult? I've been literally dodging this my whole life, and now I'm ready, and I can't even... Like, it's hard.
They don't even talk to you about it. I mean,
don't.
We did the freezing and genetic testing and all this stuff when I was 30. And I said to my OB at the time, why didn't we even talk about this at 24? You see me all the time.
Exactly.
You do these stupid pap smears. Why not test for
Pap smears are not stupid, everyone. Pap smears are not stupid.
They're not stupid. But I just mean, you do that. Why aren't we doing, you know, a sonogram alongside that?
Exactly.
And talking about your hormone levels and doing genetic testing? Like, you're so concerned about one part, but not the rest of it that really matters to women.
Exactly.
At least to know.
Yeah.
You have no benchmark. It shouldn't be when you're 35 and desperate to have a baby. It's like the ship sailed.
That's right.
So I'm going to have all my, I mean, any daughter of mine will get the option of paid egg freezing. We will be talking about fertility very early. We talk about it too late as a culture.
Agree. I mean, I think, but also I really do believe that it wasn't presented to us as an option beforehand when we were younger, when our parents, it's just not.
Your OB doesn't even mention it.
It's just, it wasn't the time, right? Like it wasn't of the time. And I think now we're just a lot more vocal about women, our health, women nowadays are a lot more in power, right? We are the breadwinners in the households a lot more. We are founding companies, CEOs. Like, it's just, we're in, I think, more positions of power now, too. So it's like, hold up, you know, hello. Like, we're doing other things, not just staying at home, birthing children isn't our main job anymore. And so I think that now, you know, it needs to be more a part of the conversation as we raise our daughters. Obviously, we will introduce that, like, hey, little girl, hey, excuse me.
Exactly.
You know, so, I mean, I think that makes a difference. But it's interesting. I also read something about you. This was what I want to, like, go back to, too, was that I thought this was so cool, that you were one of the first, or the only, who created, like, a childcare system within the restaurant that went from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m.
So we were working with a company called Vivy, and I found them through a friend, and then it turned out that one of the founders, Ben, went to college with us, and a dear friend of ours. And it's amazing. Vivy is really trying to transform childcare. They're working with Reshma on the Marshall Plan for Moms. But I've been really pushing them and Reshma to really consider, again, no one thinks about restaurants.
Right.
So on most task force, on most think tanks, they still don't include restaurants, again, despite the fact that top employer of single mothers and the second largest employer in the country, with very specific dynamics.
Right.
The highest earning shifts are nights and weekends, exactly when traditional childcare doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And what we started seeing at the restaurant was, in fact, a lot of the moms couldn't hold their jobs, let alone advance, right? Because part of that, too, is if you want to get into management, you have to be available.
There. That's right.
So unfortunately, we launched the program and then COVID hit.
Wow.
So I'm now trying to really revive a lot of these efforts with Vivy, trying to get involved in the Marshall Plan for Moms, because it is an industry that's very structurally and categorically excluded from, you know, it's not like this country has great support, period.
Right.
But for what exists, we're categorically excluded, and you're talking about millions of people across the country.
It just seems like when I read it, I was like, duh, that makes so much sense. Like, how could we not? Like, how could this have even never happened before?
Well,
like,
this
it just...
country hates moms. So,
well,
you know.
this country, I mean, with women, right? Yeah. Just period. And let's not even get into minorities. So, like, it's just, I understand, right? But it's just, it made sense. Like, it was just like one of those aha moments. You're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But let's talk about that, though, right? Because mothers in the workforce, you have a
But I started it before I was a mom.
Career. I know,
even,
but
like,
still,
kids.
yes, but even still now, you're fully in it. You are,
oh yes.
I mean, you are fully in it. Like you are busy. You are doing things. Your career is like everywhere. So now with 3 Under 3, I literally was at your house, full event going on, walk in on Josh in the back room having Zoom meetings. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I never would think, like, I'm not even, that's not the question I think I'm asking. I'm thinking more so, as a mother, do you feel like anything was challenged more, maybe? Now having 3 kids and, like, work and all these other responsibilities?
I mean, all of it. I mean, I think there's so many elements to that. I think one, you know, you talk about business, for example. I am fundraising for Westbourne. We just brought on our first investor, and the other day, I told them, I was like, I'm going to breastfeed while we're on our meeting. I now have no shame. The guy was, you know, they're like, okay. And I said, you actually gave me a term sheet the day before I had my baby, but you didn't know I was pregnant because it's Zoom. And I honestly think that fundraising when you're pregnant is probably impossible. I think being able to be on Zoom post-COVID opens up a lot of opportunity for moms. You get to control your environment versus having to go somewhere.
Right.
Transit time is a big time when you're nursing or you have to be with your other kids.
So true.
Especially when they're young. This is the time where you're like really full on. I mean, the short answer is it's just shit show. I think I just try and I do my very best to take it day by day. One, we are so fortunate to have a tremendous amount of help. Two, my husband is very, very 50-50.
Yeah.
For example, he's at a company, he has 12 weeks full paid paternity leave.
Which I think is amazing.
Which should be the standard.
It should be the standard.
It's
and
insane.
The fact that it isn't is wild.
And that he took it, and his company is supportive, and they really want him to take it, that he is involved with our kids during this time. Like, you know, you have to be able to pick a partner that complements that. Yeah. I think you have to be able to have some form of help, whether that's a family member, whether that's a community. Like, you cannot parent alone. I'm sorry.
You can't.
It's honestly insane that we're like, that baby's made 50-50. It's so funny. We actually do this thing with my son. I go, you know, where do you come from? And he goes, home. And I go, who made you? He goes, mama. And I go, where? And he goes, there. And he points to my belly. You know, and Josh will be like, I'm sorry, I played a role. And I was like, did you? Prove it. Did you?
Exactly.
It's like the guy contributes 50-50, quote unquote. And then they're like, Mom, go do everything.
It's true.
Recover, have the baby, feed the baby, work, take care of the other children.
That's right.
Have date night, be sexy, cook food.
That's right.
Like, clean the house. You're like, what in the literal fuck? This is insane.
I think it was something.
How can you do all that?
It was
That's
insanity. That someone said recently. Gosh, I wish I could remember exactly how she said it. Oh, we're expected to work like we don't have children, and like parent like we don't work. And I was just like, my gosh, you are right.
But by the flip side, I think Josh is coming around to it, but we've definitely gotten into tussles over this. Like, one day he goes, this is when I'm like enormously pregnant, and he's like, oh, you know, I took all those packages for you to the UPS, and you know, the guy was telling me like, oh, your wife must like feel so lucky like that you do these things for her. And we're like bathing our kids. I like literally lost my shit. And I was like, here's what. I could be at the grocery store on a conference call with an investor with a laptop open, breastfeeding a kid, and no one is complimenting my shit.
Not
and
one.
I was like,
not one.
Literally, I was like, are you crazy?
Dude.
So he goes, why are you like, you should be happy that I'm getting complimented. And I was like, I am, but I also want you to at least understand.
I'm offended.
You will never, ever, that will never happen for me.
Never.
Ever.
Never.
And this is the narrative we have to flip is
it's so true.
You are not do you know how many times our school calls him super dad? I'm like, where's my super mom?
1,000%. 1,000%. Issa will take all 3 of the kids out and about, and he's done this, and he's told me. Issa was like, yeah, I took him to the movies. And Lizzy, you would be surprised about how many women were like, do you need help? Can I help you carry something? Oh, let me, do you
Can't believe you're out with that.
Oh my God, this is like amazing. Oh, what do you do? Oh, can I help you, sir? Like anything. All these other like women. I said, are you kidding me? I'm with them like all the time, and no one looks twice at me. If anything, they're like, gosh, she looks disheveled like a mug. Like, you know, if anything, it's not a positive. It's like, it's slightly judgmental. You know what I mean?
Opposite the school, like, so we actually have this whole funny system that I came up with. I was like, here's what. Your primary contact for the school. Why is the mom the one that's called? Yeah. I'm sorry. If you 50-50 made that kid, you're not 50-50 responsible if they're sick. How many dads leave work if their kid's sick? Like, raise your hand, people.
Yeah, exactly.
0.
Yeah.
Crickets.
Exactly.
Like, why?
Yeah.
So your job is less important. What you're doing is less important. That literally 99.9% of the time the mom's called. It's insane.
Are you
like,
kidding?
But the dad doesn't know what to do.
But this is the thing.
I didn't go through training. That's the other thing. Like, I didn't go through a mom class.
There was no book.
Special powers.
There was no handbook. They're not handing it out at the hospital.
Act like women have this like special key card that the dad didn't get.
It's
I'm
so
like,
true.
Here's what? We got the same handbook. It's crazy.
But you know what's crazy is that Issa probably is the primary on any of their school stuff, and I'm still the one to get called.
Oh,
I'm
see,
like,
they
I'm
actually
not
don't
even
tell
primary.
me anything, and I kind of laugh.
I'm like, dude, I'm not even the first number, and y'all still calling me. Like, it's wild. So I think it's also just kind of how people are ingrained, right? Like, they've been trained to just think mom, which I get. Listen, in our household, Issa is definitely 50-50. Issa is definitely hands-on dad. Issa's definitely like, you know, all the things. And I'm so appreciative of it. However, I'm definitely the more nurturing of the two. So my kids are definitely coming to me if like they fall or like, you know, or something happens. They're definitely like, hey, mom, you know, they're not.
I'm just saying, though, we need to move closer to an actual 50-50. And look, it can
I
slide.
agree.
It's a sliding scale, right? It oscillates. But like, why are we mom's in the touchdown zone and dad's out of the stadium?
1000%.
And you're like, this sounds great. And you both made the baby and they have two parents. It's like, do they have two parents?
Exactly.
So we work really hard, I think, to be very anti-gender norm, like maybe almost to an excessive degree. Like,
no, I think it's
look at
though.
every system and I'm like, nope, that's not going to be mom.
That's
like,
right.
Nope, we're not doing that. And I give Josh a lot of credit.
He's
probably
down
very
for
tough
it.
to be married to. And, you know, we talk a lot about those things for our kids too, and
right.
what they see, how they think about care, and vice versa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, when mom goes away on a trip, we talk a lot about, like, let's talk about work as something that fulfills us.
Right.
And that's our passion.
Yes.
Not this, like, obligations that our kids see. It's also important that both of us are independent, full humans outside of being parents.
Right.
And that's important for our kids to see and hear,
Well,
not
listen.
just daddy goes to work
1000%.
and whatever. Like, a lot of moms don't talk about their work with their kids.
I know, and I think it helps shape the viewpoint of little boys and little girls, right?
Totally.
It's like, it's wonderful for my daughters to see me in positions where, one, I'm fulfilling things that I love to do. I heard this quote last night. And I think, just to finish my thought, and I think it's wonderful for my son to see that a strong woman, right, or a woman that is like doing things that, and not like pushing herself down, or not, you know, maybe not doing the fullest of what she would love to do as well. I'm still doing those things for her. So for the boys and the girls to see that in their mother, it's amazing. But I heard this quote yesterday at dinner. She said to me that her mom would always tell her, and this was, I was talking to a grown woman. She told me that her mom would always tell her that having children was the most important thing I did, but it wasn't the only thing I did. And I was like, wow, I think that quote right there speaks volumes in so many ways, because my children they are the most important things in my world. I love them. They are the most important things I've ever done. Being a mother to me has just truly been such a blessing, but it's not the only thing that I've done. And it's not the only thing that I will do. And people, the world, my family will know me for other things. And I thought that was just like, I thought it was remarkable, because as mothers, you know, we kind of sometimes get stuck in spaces. And I know for me as a new mother, when I first had my daughter, I was lost in motherhood a little bit. I was like so in the grind of like having her and like being a new mom that I forgot that, like, hello, like I existed and there were some
Too
things
special
here.
to be locked up.
I'm like, hello, you are holding me down. No, I'm just like, I think
But I
was
had
just,
the
I
opposite
missed it.
experience.
Did you? Tell
and
me.
I still do. I think that there is a little bit of I think women are constantly in a double bind. I mean, right? It's like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
True.
That's our world, point blank. But I actually feel the opposite, which is, I always tell people it's very un-PC. I'm not really into newborns. Like, I don't want to hold your baby. I love you. I'll give you all the advice. I'll get you in a totally green house. Like, I will fix up, I'm the person you call if you want like all natural, butt cream or whatever. Like, I'm here to help you. But I always say, like, you go around at showers and they're like, oh, I'll babysit. I'm like, I won't. Yeah. But I will take you out for a really fun night. And let me tell you, that's probably better.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'll help you find a babysitter and I'm taking you out. But no, I'm not babysitting your
But
kids.
wait a minute. I'm the same way too, though. I was like that with my baby.
I didn't get lost in motherhood.
Were you not like that with your baby, your newborn?
No.
Oh,
and I still am not like,
Interesting.
my son who's 2.5, I'm better once they're like toddlers, and that's very much like my superpower. Mm-hmm. But I didn't get lost in it, and I think for a lot of other new moms, they don't want to be friends with someone who's like that because it's different from them.
Interesting.
I think that there is a separation between moms who work and moms who don't.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of cross-judgment involved.
I totally
that
agree.
we don't talk about, but it is there.
That's totally agree.
And I think that the world, they're torn between, you're amazing. Like, honestly, even last night, oh my gosh, you had a baby 6 weeks ago. First sentence is always about how you look.
Yeah, that's
you
so
look
true.
amazing. You don't look haggard. Are you sleeping? And you're like, well,
not really, but
no, I do sleep, actually. I have a whole system. That's a whole other thing. Anyone who wants to sleep train their kids, call me.
I can't wait.
I'm savage. But then there's like the whole other side of, oh, you didn't skip a beat, which is like both good, but also there is again a judgment of, aren't you supposed to be home? Don't you want to be home in the blissful time? And I'm like, you know what? I don't find that interesting.
Right.
I'm not a sit still person.
Right.
I don't feel tired. I don't feel expended. So I don't want to stay home just to be like what a new mom's supposed to be.
Right.
I don't want to do all the things. Like with my son, my firstborn, I told Josh, I feed the baby, I grew the baby, I birthed the baby, I had an emergency C-section. It was a very traumatic experience. I am not changing a diaper. Yeah. I don't even want to see a diaper. Don't put it in my hand.
I love that.
I did not know how to change a diaper for months. And in fact, we got into multiple fights about it. And I was like, you don't know how to breastfeed? Why do I have to know how to change a diaper? It's the least you could do.
Wow.
You need to do all of the things that I can't possibly do. Right. That's 50-50 to me.
Right. That you can't possibly do. All the things that he can't possibly do. Yeah.
Totally.
Exactly.
Everything that you cannot do is your role.
Right.
So he bathes. We bathe our kids together as like when they're older, but as babies, like to be honest, I don't want to give a newborn a bath. It's terrifying.
But you know what, though? I think that also creates a lot of bond for your partner, though, too. Like, that's moments.
The setup, like you said, showing your kids a different dynamic.
Exactly.
The dad's job is not just to swoop in, be cute before bedtime, and, like, pat the baby down.
Yeah.
Like, half of care. Eve Rodsky, who I'm obsessed with, Fair Play, I agree with her in the list, but I think every new parent should be doing that too. Yeah. Let's put down all the things that a newborn requires and let's start divvying it up.
Agreed.
Because what happens is 99.9% gets shoved on the mom. That's right. Who's already dealing with a whole secret list. But imagine. That doesn't have to do with the kid.
So true. Yeah, just her body, her mental, everything.
They're just like, you get those cards. So I put my hands up day one and I said, I don't want to. But do you know how many people find that negative?
Oh, well, like, I disagree with that 1,000%. Imagine if every couple, regardless, imagine if every couple were to implement that kind of system within the home for a new baby. New babies are probably the hardest creatures to take care of. You think that they're not, but it's just everything is changing. Everything. And it's just the lack of sleep that I experienced was incredible. I was so tired. My body was drained. I was just like, I let every piece of hair on my body grow out. I just did not care. I was just like, I can't care. I can't care how you see me anymore. I just don't care. It just, everything was about this child. And I think which my husband was still hands on, but not to that, like, not to the level of like everything exactly
makes you feel like you're hands on all
because
those things anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Because I still did a lot of the changing. I still obviously was breastfeeding. I still obviously did all these things. And so you don't think about it, but you're doing so much. You're up at the crazy hours. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. I mean,
like my husband does the night shift. I was like, look, I feed the baby.
I think that's amazing. The rest. Yeah, I think it's amazing.
I can't produce milk unless I'm rested.
That's right.
I'm lucky I can, and that's the choice we've made. But I was like, guess what? Yeah. You're on the night shift.
Right.
He was like, excuse me? I was like, I'm not waking up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's amazing. No, I think if everyone were able to do that, it'd be a whole
overnight
different
from the start.
Mothers would literally be entirely different people if that was the case.
Because it gives you the permission to say it's not all on you. Mm-hmm. This other person that's quote unquote 50% of the child's creation should be quote unquote 50% DNA of the care. Right. But also if it's explicit, then you can actually mentally take your hands off half the wheel
if that
and
is
give
what
it back to yourself.
Correct. If that's what you agree upon.
That's right. To go get your nails done without feeling
guilty,
pressure, or go take a workout class, or meditate, or sleep, or nap, and something just for you that has nothing to do with you as a mom. Right. That's permission because that other person has filled in that space in a real complete way.
I just love the fact that I really believe it honestly also helps the bonding experience for both parents in the household.
Completely.
1,000%. And I think that
it's a real unit.
Having that is immeasurable. So if that really were to occur in every household, imagine the bonds that you're even creating and the empathy that you each feel for each other. It's like now it becomes you're truly a unit. This is it.
I always tell everyone, I'm the CEO, my husband's the COO. And he constantly is like, that's below your pay grade for certain things. And I'm like, you're right. Like, even inventory for the family. Mm-hmm. Why is the mom ordering diapers?
It's true.
I was like, I'm sorry. I feed the baby for hours a day. No.
That's right.
You go on the internet. You go to the store.
Yeah.
Why am I, even something like that,
Right.
think about your partner who's not the one that birthed the baby as being the person that's responsible for inventory. Do you know how many hours that would take? How much stress that would take off of your brain?
It's so true. This
So
half
I was
and half
like,
household.
you are COO.
Right.
I don't want to hear things that don't rise to the level of strategy.
It's so true.
High level strategy.
Or you just
Do it yourself.
auto ship.
But I also think it requires a mom going to their partner as well and saying, I constantly remind him, I'm also very different. I'm not a micromanager. I don't care how things are done. Just do it. I don't need it to be done my way. I'm not controlling in that way. I actually don't care. So part of it is you also, when you give that list, like when you manage a team, you have to let them do it their own way.
That's the hard part.
And reminding your partner and yourself, you're not an expert, Mom. I'm sorry. You have great intuition. It is important to listen to, and moms are built differently, but you didn't go to a certification process. You are not a trained expert.
Yeah.
You got the same goddamn handbook that your partner did.
The zero one.
Exactly. We're all like diving in the deep end, like trying to swim, and just reminding them gives them more confidence and comfort.
Now that's what I love. That's what I like about it.
We're both figuring it out. Just figure it out.
It feels like a team mentality. That's what it does. It feels like it makes it more of a team mentality.
Totally.
And I think that if you're going to be building
you have to
a
be
team,
humble about it too.
You do. I think both parts do, right?
Totally.
Like I think both parts do, and I think that is the beauty in building the team. If you're truly on board for that, and I mean, I think that's something really to like take note of. Any pregnant women out there, anyone in relationships with children,
People say
like
all the
all
time,
that.
my husband doesn't know their routine. Why?
Right. Or like, oh, I'm leaving. I have
That's
to,
insane.
you know.
Do you know how many guys I know who say they babysit their kids? I'm like,
No.
Talking about the scratch,
No.
huh? You
No,
like the
that's
record
a-
scratch.
no.
I'm like, I'm sorry. Write it down. You have an emergency contact list. Go write it down.
What I can't stand is when you get the questions. The questions of like, oh, so who has the kids tonight? Their whole ass father has the kids tonight. That whole ass man who lives in the house with me, that's who has the kids tonight.
Remember, we met at this retreat and it was multi-day, and we were all sitting around the table going, first of all, we're all really lucky and fortunate.
Right.
We have partners that are stepping, like,
It's
consider
true.
it their job equally
It's true.
to step in. It's
true.
not like they're training. It's not temporary. They don't need backup. And we were all laughing. Like, it's sad that that's why these kinds of retreats don't exist that often, because not a lot of people can do it.
Now listen, I was raised in a household of a single mother. She raised all 3 children on her own, and she was a badass woman. I mean, but I also remember that she was very selfless, you know, like she sacrificed a lot of her personal, you know, happiness in many respects, and like those vacations and those moments and things like that to be with her kids. And so I know having a partner is a whole different way to raise children. So I feel very lucky and very blessed, especially to have someone who is hands-on. But yeah,
But I think that is the strain on a relationship.
It's a
isn't
strain.
Spoken. I think that is what happens as you go through these child-rearing years that inherently put far too much pressure, really unrealistic expectations on the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And there's never an explicit conversation. And I do think that's what happens and unravels partnerships.
Right.
Because, and I always say, you know, I say to Josh a lot, if I'm doing this alone, I'm doing this alone.
Yeah.
Then I'd rather be a single mom.
right.
If you're not going to actually help and step up to the plate, then I'd rather make all the decisions. Why do I want to have to pretend that this is like a joint situation if it's not? So like, we do have to be a team. Otherwise, you would want to do it yourself.
Yeah,
and I think that is
definitely.
what happens is partners really drift because they're really not on the same page. I think especially moms sometimes they're like, you know what, it's actually just easier to do it myself if this person really doesn't have my back. And if I'm going to disappear anyway, I'd rather disappear on my own terms.
Let's talk about you and Josh, though, because, I mean, I think it's just an interesting way that you're not only frameworking parenthood, but, you know, I do think you guys, obviously Josh has his own career, you have your own career, but you do cross over a little bit. And so how has the separation, right? Like, how did you find your way back to each other? Like, how was that process?
Tough. I mean, we lived in separate places. We started seeing a couples counselor. We both started our own therapy, and we sort of said, look, we're going to give it took about 9 months, and we put a timeline. We were like, we'll give it a year to see if we can figure this out. I think we both had a lot of growing up to do and a lot of work to do, and I think What we agreed, though, was we wouldn't date or see anyone in the interim. I think that was really important to have that ground rule.
Right.
And really took a couple months really like not talking, not seeing each other at all.
Right.
For like a real break and like to heal. And then we really started like properly dating again.
Yeah.
Like legitimately, like once a week, almost like as if you were in a new relationship. We always say we're definitely on our like 5th marriage.
No
Got
way.
A lot of them. And each one is real complicado. You know, they're complicated. It's very nuanced, especially when you've been together very long. But I think it was more about us being able to clean slate and say, you know what, and that's what we did. We said, if I were to meet you today, what kind of relationship would I want? Because that's our problem, is we have this baggage and old ways of doing things and family stuff and all these overhangs. Like, let's just say if we met today at 30, like, what would you want in an adult partner? What do you want for a family? Where do you see your life? Like, we got to recast that and almost recontract and re-sign up for each other, and then be willing to show up in that new form.
That's
and
so
I think,
true. That's once again very mature.
And to be fair, with child 3, we had another real intense break.
Yeah.
It was, I can't even remember if I told you, but it was around the time that we met. I said if I wasn't pregnant, I would serve you divorce papers. Like, this is going back to the old ways. Like, I don't want to do that again. You know, fool me once, shame on you. Like, I'm not doing this. We made a commitment. We wouldn't go back to doing things that way. We have to continue to commit. So he was sleeping in a guest room. And I said, I need a break. I wish, you know, unfortunately for our kids, like, and all of this is happening and I'm pregnant, like, I can't make you leave. I wish I could, because I'm so mad. We have to figure something out. And so we did it again. And I said, look, like, you have to commit, like, we have to commit to being the kind of people that show up every day and do things the way that we said we would.
Now, how do you do that, though?
We have to fix.
But how do you do that? Like, this is great, because I feel like this is...
You have to be willing to talk about it.
This is real, and it's real life, and it's how every relationship... You have to be willing to say to someone,
I want to divorce you.
Yeah.
Do you know? People don't say that until they really want to.
It's true. It's true.
You hold on to way too much.
But then sometimes people dangle it too, and it's just like one of those fire words that you toss out there. It's one thing to say.
That's also not right.
It's no, and that's not right either. So it's one thing to say, I'm seriously considering divorcing you. This is really how I feel. And now, what are the action steps? Do you fall back on what you learned basically from before and the tools that were given?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You go back to it and you talk about, all right, like, let's go through a couple examples. What was happening for you in that moment? What's happening for me? Is there another way we could talk about it? Maybe it's like, we don't talk about those things at midnight because that's not the right time. Like, I think there's so much that goes unspoken in relationships. I think especially as parents. Yes. And I think it's the holding on. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Yeah. And that's what I always say to him. It's really like, I don't know how to explain to you. It's not this one thing. Like, it's never one implosion. You're just like, these small things really make me feel like I'm not valued. I don't have space for myself. What I'm doing isn't as important as what you're doing. Like, and all of that in the context of you're carrying your kids. Like, I'll give a great example. You know, I'm all for like showing your kids reality, but I also think like picking fights with each other in front of your kids, I'm not okay with.
Right.
And we both talk a lot about that being not how we want to raise our children. Like, sometimes when Josh is annoyed, he'll kind of goat me when we're having dinner with our kids, because I was like, subconsciously, you know that I'm not going to take the bait. So it gives you a free pot shot.
Right.
That's not cool.
To kind of say what he wants.
And you're also putting it then on me to be the person that gets sucker punched and doesn't respond. And that's a second level of not cool.
Right. Right.
You can't do that to me.
You know, it's interesting.
And every other day, if that starts happening and I don't put the brakes on and be like, seems small.
Right.
But that little like passive aggressive comment in front of our children is really like a double punch.
Exactly. And you're feeling it.
Totally. Yeah. But mostly we swallow it and we're like, okay, not in front of the kids. It's fine. It's something small. It just happened. It's not the biggest deal.
Right.
The amount of times where people are like, well, did he cheat on you? Or like,
oh my God,
and I'm like,
1,000%. 1,000%.
I'm like, there are many ways to die besides being cheated on.
Did he beat you? Like, are you in an abusive relationship?
Like higher?
Yeah, it's so true. And you know, it's funny because the whole death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? Like, there's so much truth in that. However, there's so much truth in that, period. But it's so funny because when me and Issa are kind of like in our things or whatever it is, he's always like, the little stuff matters. And I'm like, but I know that this one thing took it over the edge. So what is the one thing? Let's go back to the one thing. And we always have like, literally, Issa will talk to you for 16 hours if he could about his emotions and feelings and what went wrong and all that stuff like that. And I'm always like, please skip to the end. So it's interesting being also with a partner who is like, he's so vocal about everything. And it's interesting also, and I'm like, I'm not vocal about every little thing. I can take some of the paper cuts. I can take some of the punches. I'm fine with that.
I bet you it comes out passive aggressively.
I don't do passive aggressive. Like, I don't do passive aggressive.
So where does it go? Because it has to go somewhere.
You know what the fucked up part about it is? I think it goes internal for me, and I think it just becomes stressors in me. Yeah. And so it doesn't even like necessarily retaliate back to him until we're in an argument, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I was nice for long enough. You know what? I'm not gonna put up with this. You know what I mean? Like, then it just like goes crazy, and I think that's where mine comes out. But I think that there is something, right, where I feel like you said something, would we still, who is the person that you would marry now, right? Like, would you still marry? And I gotta say, after being with, I mean, we've been together for what, like, together and married combined, 17, maybe 16, whatever, 17 years? I look and sometimes I'm like, I don't know if we would have met now and connected and been married. Like, if we met right now, today, where we are, I don't know if that would have happened.
But I would argue that's not the part that matters. The part that matters is today, can you recast a relationship and a dynamic that you do want to sign up for a clean slate? So like once a year, we really, I mean, frankly, even more than that, we really sit down and I'm like, in this coming year, this is what I want. This is how I want my life to be. Mm-hmm. And we got to get on the same page. Right. And like, I want a partner who's fun, who's supportive, who's like, telling my kids that I'm a badass mom.
And you do this every year?
Probably more often. I'm the very vocal
every 6
one.
months.
But honestly, I mean, but it is important because I do think, again, I think partnerships are dissolved subliminally and very subtly. Mm-hmm. I think very unusually, to your point of the one thing that pushed it over the edge might be infidelity. Right. But it's never about infidelity. Right. It's not about that one thing.
It gets to that point.
It is like, it's like being boiled, right? The frog in the water and it boils slowly. Mm-hmm. So I'm very cautious and probably overreactive to, like, I don't even want to get 5 degrees hot.
That's right. That's right.
The second you let 5 degrees go, you're going to let another 5. It's sort of like in your business. Mm-hmm. I always tell my team, quality over everything.
That's right.
You let one thing slide, you're down the mountain.
That's right.
That's how avalanches happen. Yeah. One speck of snow.
Oof, child.
You got to be careful. Child. But it's also about showing, that helps you show up proactively.
No, it does.
And actually think before you talk to this person, just because they've been with you forever, like, you still have to make that present effort. I want to be the partner for you today, right, and tomorrow, and the next day.
I like that it gives you. I like that it gives you action steps, right? Totally. Like it does give you an active way to show up for your partner and for your partner to show up for you. It really does. Totally. I mean, because listen,
the same as parenting, though. You have to choose to be the parent you want
to sit down and like really discuss and talk about, like, you know, how you want your partner to show up for you and vice versa. All these things, that takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it's shit sometimes I don't feel like talking about, like a lot. I feel like, and you know, sometimes with me and Issa, I'm like, dude, we're both working so hard on all these other things. I love you to death. I've been with you forever. Like, skip to the good part. Like, I'm just like, and I know that's so bad for me to say it that way because he is like the emotional one between the two of us. And he's the one who literally would sit down and talk all day if he could about our relationship and where we are and how we can get better and what's lacking and what's wrong. And I'm just like, dude, oh my God. Like, seriously, I cannot.
Maybe you guys need to have like
I can't handle this
party
anymore.
You go to a hotel, you leave the kids, and it's like a powwow slumber party.
I don't know if Issa's gonna be one to talk, honey. I don't know if Issa's gonna be one to do any talking at the slumber party.
I mean, you could talk after.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's true. I think we have to. I think Issa and I, one thing that we don't do enough is we don't date. Mm. We don't date. We get into the hustle and bustle of like kids. We don't. We don't.
Oh no. If he does not specify plans, I have plans.
I love that. So you date how many times a week?
3.
3 times? No way. Are you kidding me? You date 3 times a week?
But also there were times where, like, if he doesn't really make plans or talk to me about the week, I book it up as, like, to make a point.
No.
I swear I really do that.
No.
I'm like, what do you mean? I have plans with friends 7 days this week. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm not just around. Like, that's part of also, like, who wants to be with someone who's just around all the time?
No way.
Yeah.
That's wild.
But it doesn't mean,
I love that.
Look, I don't consider a date like, okay, we'll decide we're staying in and, like, you know, we'll, like, make a picnic outside.
No, listen, I mean,
like,
any quality time that you guys do, whether it's going out to a restaurant, making a picnic, anything, 3 times a week. Oh, that's awesome.
We probably even do more than 3, to be honest.
Do you consider a walk a date?
I think, like, we go for walks for, like, 2 hours, and we'll, like, walk and talk and, like, really hang. Honestly, we do a lot of, like, I dine all over the city, obviously, because I love food.
Yes.
But, like, I actually like going far from our house. We, like, actually have very quality time in the car, even.
I love that.
Like, we'll intentionally be like, okay, it's 45 minutes to dinner. Like, we can really dig in on, like, stuff we haven't caught up on the week.
So that means you're not on phones. You're not on any electronics. You're taking time with each other. Intentional time.
Yeah.
So dating / intentional time with your partner 3 or more times a week.
Yeah.
That is phenomenal.
But again, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be crazy.
Yeah.
Once a month, we go on a staycation, just us.
Once a month. Once a month. Wow.
At least every 6 weeks.
I love, see, these are the things that I think people
We travel a lot.
need to be reminded of.
But again, you know.
You travel a lot without kids.
Without kids. With and without.
Mm-hmm.
But look, I say to, you know, people are like, oh, you know, you're lucky you can. I'm like, you can trade houses with your mom. Like, go stay at your parents', have them stay with your kids. Like, there's lots of ways to get quality time out of your regular space that does not cost money.
Right.
Like, friends are always asking people to house sit.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, listen,
there's
it does
a lot
take,
of ways
it
to
takes
swing
a village, it takes community.
Day you can do.
Right. It's hard.
Like,
It's,
anyone can. You just have to put it in place.
You know what I think it is, like you're saying? You have to put it in place. You have to be... You have to be active about the effort. I think that's more so.
You have to be present and intentional. That's what it is. Anything is possible. You have to invest in it the way you invest in all other things, and that's the point. I think we don't a lot. Yeah. And I always say, and I think it took Josh 3 kids to finally agree that I'm right on this, because he never liked this. Honestly, kids until they're mid-teens, the only person's health who matters to them is their mother. Wow. When your mom is healthy, I think every person, when you think about your family dynamic, when your mom is happy, healthy, satisfied, you feel happy. Mm-hmm. Your, like, that umbilical cord is still there.
That's true.
I do not care if the dad is the stay-at-home parent. I do not care what the division is. There is something biological. Your mother's happiness affects your mental health so intensely. And I said to him, your job until our kids are in their mid-teens is to make me happy. Truth.
Oh my God, can we put this on a t-shirt?
But I said, think about it. Look at every kid. Think about your own childhood.
No, it's true.
So if you as a partner don't realize and invest in that, mom needs to be healthy, stabilized, balanced, fulfilled.
And by healthy,
in whatever.
Mentally, physically, emotionally.
All of it.
That's right.
That is so tied, and I think one of the biggest drivers of your kids' happiness and health.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know why though? Because they see you.
Dad.
Yeah, because they see you.
They see biological.
You.
I do. I think it is evolution. I think it's biological. I think there is but again, I think regardless of the parent, I think I also think moms there is this aura around the family, and I think that's a big driver of the aura for your kids. And I do think a lot of times it's like, that's the ignored part. Mom can take anything. Mm-hmm. She can figure out anything. Whatever slides, mom's going to pick it up. Whatever balls drop, mom's going to pick it up. That's not a way to a healthy parent. Yeah,
I agree. I think in healthy parent households, I agree with what you're saying, but I think that in other households that aren't necessarily as healthy, I feel like it's what you see, right? Like, it's who you're connected. Like, so whether that's mother or grandmother, you know, who is raising you, or whether it is auntie or whoever that, you know, but with that maternal figure that's in your world. Yeah, I mean the main person who's. So it's hard to think biological though, right? Like, it's hard to feel like that's biological if it's, you know, if it's like who's in the house but I have a lot of friends, for example, adopted. Yeah. They still think about their biological mother. Of course, and I'm like, okay, but what about the person that, like, raised you? Was your world, the greatest human I've ever met, and you're still thinking about, it's still in your brain, is all I'm saying. I do think there's something about, like,
you are somehow tied to this person that made you.
Yeah.
Regardless. So again, yes, there are many different types of families,
I mean,
many
we can
different
go
types
in
of situations, but I just mean in a partnership with a mom, I do think actually being able to say my mental health is a priority, my happiness is a priority outside of the family unit, because the family unit actually thrives on that so immensely.
It does. It really does. I mean, I think the mother in the household, or whatever that maternal figure is, it really does. Kids, I think kids feel it. Kids sense things that we don't even realize. And, you know, to be honest with you, I could talk to you for hours. I really could. I could literally, I think there needs to be a follow-up. I think there needs to be a part 2, 3, 4, and 5. I can't see why. I can see why you're the first. I can see why you're the first of everyone's podcast, but I can't understand why you're not like the 100th and 15th.
I'm ready.
1,000%. So just remember, we're saying it right now. Camilla will be the 200th person as well on this podcast for the follow-up. Honestly, I love you. I could talk to you forever. I think you're so fascinating. I think you're so accomplished in so many ways. And I mean, kudos to you. I adore
one
you.
Foot in front of the other, right?
Yes, we do. But I text you this all the time. I'm like, I adore you. I just think it's like, so I really think,
Kindred light.
Congratulations on family and success.
And you heard it here first. We're having our 4th kids at the same time.
You heard it here first. Breaking the internet, guys. Yes. Breaking the internet. All right, guys. Everyone, Camilla Marcus, thank you. Stay tuned for more of the Cool Mom Code podcast. We'll be back.
Thank you.
And just keep listening. We've got more to share.